What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here and welcome to a new album review. I apologise that this album came out over a week ago to this point for me to review this album, but I'm really glad to finally do it and review this record from one of my favourite bands. Today I'm going to be reviewing the latest album from the band Swans, entitled The Beggar. This is the band's 16th studio album across their discography, and this is a record to be released through the very acclaimed label of Young God Records that was founded by the band themselves, if not the mastermind who created this whole band's existence in the first place, the musical mastermind Michael Gira. Swans are a band that is completely up to not for the faint of heart and to really challenge your listening approaches when you listen to music. The band had been releasing an endless amount of albums through multiple genres like industrial, post-rock, drone, ambient, experimental rock, just to name a few, because this is a gigantic variety monster of a band, and they have released a lot of well-acclaimed albums like Filth, Cop, The Great Annihilator, and Children of God, soundtracks for the blind, and from the last decade, after their reformation, the band had released two monstrously acclaimed albums. They are The Seer back in 2012 and the album that blew me away and got me introduced to the band of To Be Kind back in 2014. The way I see this album is, this is something very personal and as quite emotional sounding. The way I see Swans is, this is not just a band, this is a band that can do no wrong for portraying something as disturbing, graphic, and as intensifying. This is a 2-hour-long record, and with my experience on this record, The Beggar is, in my opinion, a really brave and powerful record. The Beggar has this big theme into the theme of mortality, and the way Michael Gira himself portrays something like this is a record with a lot of reflection, difficult presence on where Gira decided to go into this new project of an album. The first track on the record, The Parasite, acoustic opening to dreamy sounds, while Gira expresses this sinister, low range. He sounds dramatic and breathy with the excellent mix of the reverb. It makes this haunting and spooky direction, and that continues heavily with the rest of the album. The lyrical context into this one is into the side of aging, and the parasite is the old age. Not possible to leave the old age, and the only way is to accept it. The synth sounds were very rich and wonderfully made, while the music gets intriguing from its intense vibe. Then we hear some more droning soundscaping elements with simple beats and increasing the whole track's progression. Second track, Paradise Is Mine. Gira does draw into some more lines in exploration about the state of the universe in this song, and yet again mentions about a limited time that he has on himself. In the clean guitars, they brilliantly make a dark, gloomy presence. This is as slow as interesting to build something big from its suspense and not forcing or rushing things whatsoever. It really has a great movement through the whole mood and purpose on this track. There's later aggravations of noisy keyboards, and the heaviness does come into play later on, which creates this dense atmosphere through the band's musicianship. Los Angeles, City of Death, popping into some more of this rock tonality, sweet rhythm through the drums and backing vocal harmonies, ascending noises of guitars that strike the chords, involving some higher frets placements. The lyrics detail this time into the ongoing theme of mortality, and it focuses on, at the same time, something as environmental themed besides the inevitable state through Gira's description, more pressure and agony when it goes along. It was a really good addition after the two opening very strong tracks, because this is one that is as inspired as possible. The track Michael Is Done is one of my favorites. Delay guitars, fading in effects, softly comes, and Gira pops in and out with the same harmony arrangement, creates this horrific, spooky nature, but beautifully hearing other sounds like the bells and some background ambience. The lyrics are making themselves out if there's going to be a disease coming into Gira's system. Just as it couldn't get weirder, the music then abruptly changes into maybe like this poppy, joyful Christmas feeling, which was just as unexpected as ever. And while it is full of this poppy vein, it just continues this awkwardness despite this heavy, big subject matter. It doesn't shy away through its unapologetic choice, which I really like a lot. So it starts things just as normally and then pops right into something that I would not have expected. Unforming. This is a folky musical line that sweetly hears more drones, and the calmness through the acoustic guitars were lovely through the mix. The lyrics are about the desperate state and heavy wordplay. Gira thinks about the moment and yet finds a lot for himself to learn, and wishes more time, but questioning himself from what his body will be thinking and react to differently than what Gira is thinking. I do admire the instrumentation because it focuses not on brutality, but makes this separate, ominous vibe, while the vocals were increasing more of the simple melody when you hear the frail state of Gira's emotions. Then the title track, The Beggar, is another highlight for me on here. Despairing emotion and fear. The band mixes this huge blend of produced noises and teamwork together with the executed preparation to grow the looping side of this band's music. It dives into this vicious and twisting view. This is a song which I do love very, very much, pretty much since the first listen. Questioning Gira a lot on learning to live, gets to live, and places himself in different descriptions. And in my mind, that it's like he is trapped and not free at all. Perfect in his imagery. And the communication was perfect on this really deep journey and the sinister shifting through the band's sound. Probably the most emotional song on the album is No More of This. The return into the tonality of the ambient genre, swirling guitars coming in through the pitches and chords that was slowly played and slowing the tempo. This imagery is like he's in this moment to face the inevitable in that frail state, and the chords were gorgeously played through this gentle, swimmingly soft behavior after the last track. Great transition, work out right on the spot. It is a big, powerful moment throughout this album so far. Ebbing. The keyboards at the start come in this magical spot for a few seconds, involving more of the continuation through the other instruments. This is more or less acoustic, engaging once again. The hook was lovely. With this song, Gira paints this separate, bigger picture, and it feels like that it's moving away from the place where you came from lyrically. It's like that he is into a much better place through this whole progression of the album's theme. Wider and open scenery throughout this track's dynamic vision to open things up in a great and yet somber way while the band decides to play along. Why can't I have what I want anytime that I want? Shimmering, haunted lines and less complexity. Gira's vocals, in my mind, were very shaken to this point from his innocent way of vocal performances, the desperation on the recovery from addiction. And the more I think about this track, it's like that he did go through a darker, depressing state, through the alcoholism, and it was a traumatic time in his past. And there were a few other lines on complicated romance. I love the separate voices in this track because they just make a howl separately, as the sound was uncomfortable and impending all at once. Deepened state, even more detailed. It's exhilarating playing from the percussion, and bass lines were unrelenting. Frantic guitar noises. The rest of the band have done a great, brilliant point to make more horrific noises through the album. 40+ minute piece that you get to hear if you buy the CD version of the album, The Beggar Lover. This is in part of the trilogy of the longest compositions from the band, by the way. This is an epic, really long and winding void to complete this ride. It's mesmerizing, the long noises through the synthesizers to percussion that was so brutal, delay production and orchestrations. There's multiplying pieces, bells ringing to wind instruments, you name it. This whole delivery of this composition can take you into many different places. It was as engaging and cleverly well organized. You do get to hear Gira's wife earlier on, and then you can hear Gira's daughter later on, and then the last section of this piece is personally my favorite moment, jamming through the drums and the repetitive nature on the vocal melody line from Michael, being built in these different dramas and many searched ideas, vibrant textures, and this syncopation. Another one of the stronger cuts on this record. It can be really jarring at first, feel like it's not going to go anywhere, but it beautifully makes the separate paces go on and on in a repetitive way, but as comfortably as possible. I really do love when the band can just go straight in and play through these previously written ideas and different compositions and gel them into one. The last track, The Memorious, this kind of post-rock vein, and especially like with Paradise Is Mine, this was adding a lot of the repetitive and, in my opinion, unfortunately annoying baby sounds throughout this last track. The heavy repetitive rotation comes back in. Gira explores his past self and goes back in time into the industrialism when he used to work in a copper mine when he was a teenager, and his experiences were greatly added into that period, into lyrics at this point in the album's closing moments. The constant drive and looping of the music through this story increases, and the same beat remained all the way through, same harmonies and persistent, very patient hooks. It's a really good contrast to make this a very good finale, to make this whole record fit into these whole pieces from beginning to end. The production is spectacular, as Young God Records has been one of my favorite record labels, and this whole balance, this really vicious and yet grim but amazing result through this period of Swans, from the last decade, ever since their reformation to this, the band have made an extending but long, phenomenal period in this point in the band's over 40-year career. As I've mentioned, The Beggar is to me a worthwhile album. I will say this, it is not to me one of the strongest albums from the band, and there were some theories that this could maybe be the final album from this band because of what Michael Gira decided to make in this album through his own artistic expression. Who knows? But if this is going to be the way out for Swans, The Beggar is a very, very good and thought-provoking record. Overall, The Beggar by the Swans is one of my favourite albums of the year. Let me know what you think of this in the comments down below. Do you love this record? Do you like this record? Is this one of your favourite albums of the year? For me, as highly positive the album is, this is to me, in my opinion, not the album of the year. And it wouldn't be no surprise if some music lovers or even Swans fans would regard this as the album of the year. I'm going to give The Beggar by Swans an 8.5 out of 10. It would have been a 9, but an 8.5 to me is a really, really appropriate and a much better rating scale. After all of this long and shadowing but great effort from one of the greatest bands of all time. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.